Hello everybody, it's me, Rhoku, back with more Toplane 101. In this video, we are going to talk about macro, the thing that everybody talks about, but nobody precisely defines, which is what I'm going to try to do in this video, in addition to making an overall macro guide for top laners, and also a vision guide towards the end of the video, because vision is very much intertwined with top lane. So first off, what exactly is macro? Macro is the name given to a skill that describes a player's awareness and understanding of what is happening in the game at any given moment. This contains things like win conditions for each team, where their champion should be, where the enemy jungler is if they're not on the map. Like, there's an infinite number of example questions that can be given that just fall under macro, because macro is just an immensely blanket term. It's just a mix of perceptiveness, game knowledge, and just general focus. Before we get into anything, in order to actually use your game knowledge and stuff in game, you have to do one thing that most solo queue players don't. Actively think. I don't mean this as an insult, but most players in solo queue are on autopilot. Their mind is somewhere else on the second monitor and not on the game. You cannot be doing that because fundamentally, League of Legends is a thinking game. And if you're on autopilot and the enemy team has a single person who's focusing, that person will outplay you on every single level, even if they are the worst player. Same goes vice versa. You can beat a better player if you're focusing on the game. You have to focus on the game at every second in order to improve your macro skill, collecting as much information as possible to make the most educated decisions. This macro strength is the difference between a player who dies to a jungle gank and a player who backs off and wastes the enemy jungler's time, creating pressure for their team. Once you make sure that you're focused in the game and you're already using all the game knowledge you have, at that point improving your macro is just improving your game knowledge. That's just watching how champions path around the jungle, watching how players rotate around the map, watching, how much damage each champion does with which items. Just learning about the game makes you a better player macro-wise if you're focused in the game. So make sure you're just paying attention through the entire game. Before we get into more macro, be sure that you know how wave control works, because wave control is basically how we create the space for ourselves to make use of our macro. If you don't really understand wave control, check out my 2 videos. I'll leave them up on the card and also in the description. Watch those and then you can come back to this video knowing everything. Macro thinking doesn't just start in the beginning of the match, it starts before it in the loading screen and in champion select. You have to set expectations and predictions about the game before it even happens, so that during the match, you can free up your time to think about more relevant things that are happening right now. Here's an example of me walking through an example of this with a coaching client. So let's see here. And if you have Vladimir, mid's going to be a bit quiet earlier on, but once it's level 6, Anivia should be able to get prio through most of it because, she has a wall and stuff, and Vlad can't really reach her unless he commits all in. In terms of jungle, Echo's going to be quite useless earlier on, and you might have to protect him if he gets invaded, but I don't think Nunu's going to invade like that because Vladimir can't help at all. You usually need an assassin or something. So yeah, just keep an eye out on the jungle because Nunu's going to be way more strong than Echo gank-wise. Bot lane is probably going to get messed up because it's just Jinx versus Lux Caitlyn, right? Yeah. So Lux lands a single root and then she's just dead. So yeah, let's just hope they can survive. But you guys have a pretty good team fight, honestly. It's just that, Nunu can take over the game quite easily if he wants to. Yeah. In terms of top lane, he has Ignite. So we don't want to mess around with it too much. Just level 1, play it a bit more carefully because he can actually kill you. We didn't take lethal, we took conquer. So I'd say just play it quietly, play it carefully, wait for level 3, and then we go for the fights. Okay. I'd say D shield is fine. D blade if you're aggressive, but D shield is honestly better because if he does go for a more aggressive earlier trade, then we end up better.
Yeah.
Okay. Be careful because they might invade. You have to use what you already know about the game to really predict what's going to happen and have a plan on what you're going to do and how you're going to play and what you're going to watch out for. Your entire early game wave control strategy and macro plan should revolve around your jungler, how strong they are, where they're pathing, and where did they start. If your jungler started bot side, and they really want to fight for crab on the top side, then it's better to make sure you have priority, so that you can go help them in the river fight. If your jungler started top side, so they're going to path bot, and you're just going to be alone in the top side of the map, then it's better to play safer and just let the enemy push into you, unless it's a really good matchup, and you want to just take prio level 1, slow push level 2, shove in level 3, and do a cheater's recall to both get prio, get good trade or kill whatever you want, and also avoid the enemy jungler. There's a lot of tactics we can do, and it all stems from understanding what junglers do and what they're gonna do. As an added tip, if you're up against a bad matchup that you cannot have prio against, say a flash ignite press the attack Vayne, then you better communicate to your jungler that you're not going to be able to fight when they come to gank, because let's face it, a lot of junglers have no idea how some matchups work. Macro decision making beyond the first few waves is simply a matter of awareness, understanding what your champion can do and what kind of fights they can contribute in. If your champion is a great roamer like Akshan and they can help in cross map plays, then you can actually look at the whole map and just look for fights you can take part in. If your champion is very slow or you don't take teleport, they can only help out in fights around the top side of the map, because if you go any farther out, you will lose a ton of CS. More often than not, going to a bad roam can just cost you the lane even if you didn't die, because your enemy is just going to get a ton of gold and experience and is going to have a big lead on you. So it's better to roam when you create prio with your minions, or when you already have a lead so you can sacrifice some of that lead to make your team get ahead in teamfights and skirmishes. There are many factors that come into play when deciding whether to roam or not. Is a fight worth it? In that, is roaming to that fight going to lose you the lane because you're going to lose CS? Or are the kills you're going to get for your team not even worth it because your team are playing supportive champions? All these things, okay? If winning the fight is a net positive for your entire team, not just you, then you should be there in order to sway it in your team's direction. However, if your team possesses late game champions and the enemy team possesses early game monsters, then you're probably going to lose the fight no matter what. Simply ping your teammates back and play safe, because let's face it, you're not going to win that fight, are you, okay? And if your team goes for the fight and dies, then there's nothing you can do about that. Sacrificing your life for bad macro decisions of your teammates is never a good idea. Just trust your own gut, trust your own guns, and if you're wrong, it's a learning moment and you will get better, okay? This is where the whole champion knowledge part comes in, so whenever you detect that your knowledge of a specific champion is not enough, you should go onto the internet and do some research. You should also look out for fights in the bot lane to teleport to. Though this is only relevant after minute 14, you can still teleport to bot lane turret in order to help protect against dives. And if you're lucky, you might even get a few kills in the process. Though you will sacrifice a ton of gold, sometimes it's worth it to make sure that your bot lane remains in the match. This also applies to objectives, okay? Some objectives like, a Herald or the first 2 Drakes are okay enough to just give up because they're not that impactful, but the 3rd Dragon, the 4th Dragon, Elder Dragon, and Baron are objectives that you should really be there for, so make sure you path around the map to get to the objective and fight it before, before the enemy team gets on top of it. A good tip is to get near the objective before the objective even spawns so that your team can set up vision and etc. Once laning phase is over, you really shouldn't be grouping with your team all the time because you're wasting your gold, your XP, and you're eroding away your own lead. You should be farming at all times and doing this thing called sidelaning, and sidelaning is just farming in top or bot lane. You should only roam when you are required, and this is predicting a fight that's going to happen on an objective, and etc. Just pay attention to the map so that you can get as much farm as you can while also attending important fights. You really need to balance out both because doing too much of either can cost you the game, especially if you're one of the more powerful people on your team. Now that we've opened the topic on sidelaning, let's talk about split pushing. When it comes to split pushing optimally, you have to understand how champions rotate around the map. If you're ignorant to where the enemy team is, then you will get caught and killed. If they send champions who can't really hold you, you can keep on splitting. But if the entire enemy team is missing from the map, and there's no vision of any of them, and there's no vision of the jungle that you're split pushing against, then you really should just back off, because you're going to get caught and killed. And one big tip to all of low elo split pushers is don't split if your team isn't applying pressure. If your team isn't shoving a wave or not taking an objective, you shouldn't split, because if you do so, the enemy team can freely send everyone to kill you, right? Because they have nothing else to do. And if you die this way, don't type to your team and flame them for not doing anything, because it's your fault that you got caught and killed. You picked that time to split when your team couldn't apply pressure, so it's your fault that you got caught and killed, okay? Generally speaking, though, even if your team is pressuring something, it's not worth it to die for objectives at all, because the number one thing that ruins your carry potential is death. So instead of dying for objectives, just back off and waste the enemy team's time, because that's way more worth it. You get your CS, you get your gold, and the enemy team wastes their time allowing your team to gather more objectives and gold themselves. Split pushing in the current season is really about just wasting the enemy team's time, which is why, although powerful split pushers all have crazy amount of mobility. Alright, let's talk about sieging. Sieging is something that a lot of players mess up due to inexperience, due to greed, and due to just not understanding how much wave clear the enemy team has. If you're up against a team with basically zero wave clear, so no mages, pushing up into one lane is usually enough to get the turret, get the inhibitor, go for a fight, and end the game. But that's usually not what's going to happen, okay? Into teams with wave clear, with more careful players who don't just get caught, you have to employ a different strategy called the 4-1, okay? 4-1. The strategy is basically this. 4 players push down one lane, and 1 player pushes down another lane. This way, you're basically splitting up their wave clear between 2 waves, and if you guys have Baron, there is no way they clear both waves at the same time, okay? This way, you will make sure that one of these turrets are going to crack, and once they do, you go in there with your entire team, everybody goes in here, and you destroy the inhibitor. And let's say that the inhibitor is gone, okay? Let's say that the inhibitor and the turret are gone. What do? Do you stay around here and just, look for fights to end the game? No, you don't want to overforce things and overstay once you've already gotten an inhibitor, because you really just got your ticket to end the game for free there, okay? No need to risk things. One of the worst mistakes that lower elo players do is just, they're super fed, they just hang around here, messing around, clearing waves, but the enemy team is really close to their base, so they just take bad trades, reset, and eventually just wipe the newer player's entire team, get all their bounties, and mount a huge comeback, okay? Overstaying kills your lead and just destroys any chance you have of winning the game, so don't overstay. You get the inhib, all your teammates are tired, they don't have a lot of mana or HP, go back to base. And then what do? You do the same exact thing, but with the other lanes, okay? So for here, let me just get another color here. Blue. So you do the same exact thing, 4-1, okay? 4-1. With these other 2 lanes. And what's the thing about inhibitors is that super minions count as an additional member on your team split pushing. Supers push waves incredibly hard. So if you just wait while doing this, clearing waves, until your supers get here, you're basically looking at a 3-way push. They have to clear these minions in order to not have losses on here in their turrets, okay? This just splits them up so much that you guys will destroy these turrets as well, okay? Something's got to give here again, and it's even easier to get one of these turrets. So, boom, you get one of these turrets, the other inhibitor, you can get these 2 as well, and after that, you know what happens when you take all 3 inhibitors down? Every single wave spawns with 2 supers each wave, okay? So each wave on each lane comes with 2 supers. That's 6 supers in total every single time, okay? That is insane. At this point, recall and just push together with all of your supers, and you'll have so many minions that the enemy team cannot even fight you, because you have all these minions backing you up, and you guys could just not even engage and just stand around here and have the supers end the game themselves, okay? That was not intentional, but I'll pretend it was. So, yeah, right? Now, keep in mind, this is like the theoretical case, okay? This is how it is theoretically. The plan to cleanly end the game without any losses. If you get the inhibitor and, I don't know, the enemy team goes in and then you just destroy them, right? You win this fight. All of your members are alive. You lose 2 people, but you just ace them. Then just go ahead and end the game, right? If you guys ace the enemy team and there's like 30, 40 seconds left, then just go run down and end the game. But if you are not super ahead of the enemy team, if the enemy team can fight back, if there's any risk of them killing you, don't overstay for basically nothing, okay? Don't int your lead. That's one of the biggest mistakes for loyal players who cannot close games out. Alright, so let's talk about vision. So I'm going to split the vision up into red side and blue side so that we kind of understand where to put wards depending on which side we spawn on. So for those of you who don't know, this side is blue side and this side is red side, or purple side it used to be. Okay, so as for blue side, right, there's a ton of amazing warding spots that red side doesn't really have a lot of access to, okay? So if you are playing a bit more aggressively, right, you definitely want a ward around here because this is a very common route for junglers to gank top lane, okay? A lot of junglers love to just do their camps or whatever and just come in through here, under here, and come flank you. So that's a common route for a lot of junglers. So a ward here is very, very good. However, unless you have a lot of prio in lane, you won't be able to protect a control ward here. So it's better for a stealth ward. You should be placing your control ward around here, right? Because this is a much safer spot for control ward and it covers a good enough area. It covers both a bit of this entrance so that if they're coming down here you get some warning, but mostly just covers this river and it's great for that. If you're playing about a bit more defensively, a stealth ward here is very, very useful, but if the enemy team has a very strong jungler, a ward here is also very nice to warn you of invades and such, okay? If you get time to basically leave lane and roam around, wards right here, or even here are very beneficial for your team because you can get to watch the entrances of the enemy jungler. So if they pass through here or here, they will be seen by your ward. So getting vision on your jungler is very good for your entire team. Not to mention how if your jungler sees the enemy jungler right here, they can freely go for an invade down here, take their camps, or even go for a gank in bot lane or for a flank in mid lane like that if they want to challenge the 2v2, okay? Another position for wards, if you are a bit behind, let's say your turret is destroyed and stuff, you definitely want to ward here. This is basically the most important ward if you're on the back foot because like the enemy like top lane is going to be passing through here a lot. If you have this turret gone, they're going to be passing through this jungle a lot, and this position is the best one for defensive warding if your first turret is down, okay? Generally speaking, I wouldn't recommend going for wards around here or here because they're in there far too deep, okay? In laning phase, okay, this turret is still up, their jungler is actively roaming around the map, and the enemy top laner isn't going to just let you walk in here, right? So if you go for wards like this, you're basically asking for a 1 versus 3. So only do it when you have backup, okay? And let's be real, it's solo queue, probably not going to happen, so don't, basically, okay? I think that is pretty much it for early laning wards on blue side. Let's switch over to red side, shall we? Okay, so on red side, things are a lot simpler because you really have to just ward this position, okay? No matter what defensive, offensive, you have to ward this spot because if you have just this spot warded, you're leaving yourself open to a very disgusting gank where the enemy jungler can turn on sweeper, get down here, and gank you with a sick flank. And the thing is, right, unlike ganks here, where the enemy champion has to have mobility to get behind you, enemy junglers can do this gank without needing any wall crossing abilities, okay? So you can just eat the worst possible ganks by the worst possible champions in just the worst way. So make sure you have this tri-brush warded no matter what, okay? If you're a bit more aggressive, warding this bush is very good as well. I personally, and this is regardless of the side of the map I'm on, I personally put my ward right here, right here. right? Because not only does it give me the full vision of whatever's coming out of this brush, but it also gives me like a great coverage of here, right? Almost the entire entrance of this jungle, okay? So this is my personal spot for all of my stealth wards, and you can see me place it in all my streams and stuff, and I think it's basically the optimal one if you don't mind losing this ward, right? It gives you a ton of information. Okay. As for more, defensive wards on red side, you really don't have much option aside from this and having a ward here. Having a ward here is also great, but that's it. But the advantage of red side, okay, is in its aggressive ward spots, because you can place wards here, here, and here, and because the blue jungle is far easier to get into than the red jungle, you can basically like create prior with your minion waves and go for these wards like far more easily. And the best part is, right, if you crash your third or the fourth wave, well, not the fourth, won't really match up. If you crash the third wave into the enemy, you can then roam, go for a good ward here, and if you find the enemy jungler, okay, doing their grump, right here, then they're going to be super weak, because the weakest point in all junglers' path is when they do Gromp, because they come to Gromp for the healing, right? So they're low HP. So if you can catch a jungler while they're doing Gromp, you can very easily just kill them right there in a single combo, and the enemy top laner won't have time to react, will they? Okay? So if you're playing a super mobile champion like a Riven or a Fiora or something, okay, they can very easily cross walls and just be hyper aggressive. These kinds of plays are your bread and butter. Okay, so just definitely look for them. Okay. All right, so if you've lost your first turret here, then you should really just go for a ward right here, or like a ward in Tribrush is going to be quite good too if you are around here, but it's just going to be super risky to go out there and put that ward down. So it's better to just ward your own jungle rather than risk going for like super stretchy wards around these parts. Okay, these guys are not good. If you're in here, ward these parts. Okay, now that we've done vision for the early laning, let's talk about vision for split pushing. Vision for split pushing is basically just warding the jungle entrances. I'm just going to use blue because like whatever spots I mark is just mirrored on the other side of the map, so just take it like that. So yeah, if you are split pushing down here, you have to have a ward here and a ward here possibly, but one right here is just enough. So when you're split pushing, take a control ward and just plop one down here, and even if they do destroy it, you'll at least save your life when you see the enemy team and just walk away instead of fighting an entire, battle squad center to take you down. Down here, if you're split pushing right here, it's better to put a ward down right here or here, because it can very easily just watch the entrances for you. So if somebody's coming over from mid lane or from here, you can just, spot them with these wards and just take care of them. In my opinion, the ward right here is way better because it warns you of any possible position that the enemy can come from, but it doesn't give you that much of a warning. So if you're going to do this, make sure it's a champion that can just kind of cross walls, so you can run down here and, cross these walls and just get out, okay? One thing I do is whenever I'm killing a turret right here or here, I go up next to this ward and put a ward, like I press my ward button here and it plops down right here, same like this. And if you know that the enemy team just recalled and they will be trying to gank you, these wards can be super clutch, as oh, they just recalled and they're coming in here, then I'll see them and I'll back off. Same with right here, right? Let's kill this guy. Oh, I see them, whoop, I get out. Okay, that's basically the split pushing vision control. When you're splitting, right, if you can afford to buy control wards, you should definitely go for sweepers so that you can take care of vision that the enemy team has, because when you're going for flanks, which is a big part of split pushing, vision can sometimes be your enemy. So sweeper is definitely a great pickup if you're going for flanks. But if your support really sucks and there's no vision anywhere on the map, then you have to take blue ward. You have to, because if there's no vision of this entire area, then going in to ward it is a risk. This is risky. So it's way better, instead of, while split pushing, go ward and then go split push, it's better before you even walk up the split push, blue ward one of these jungle entrances or something, or somewhere that you're suspicious of. And if it's clear, then you go for the split push, okay? And if you put your blue ward in a spot where it doubles as a good ward spot, then it's just gonna be double purpose, right? It's going to give you the green light not to just farm, but it's also to give you a warning when the enemy team comes at you. Sometimes it's better to put the ward out in the open, because a lot of players are like cats. They see something they can right click and then, ooh, let's right click this. And them stopping to kill the ward just gives you enough warning to just get out of there. Okay. All right. I think that's pretty much it for the vision and also the video. Thank you guys very much for watching this guide, and I hope you learned a lot. I'll see you next time. Peace out.